Welcome, friends. This is A Course in Miracles Palm Beach Study Group. Today we're on Chapter 15, Section 9, The Holy Instant and the Attraction of God. In the book, it's in the text on page 322. As the ego would limit your perception of your brothers to the body, so would the Holy Spirit release your vision and let you see the great rays shining from them, so unlimited that they reach to God. It is this shift to vision that is accomplished in the holy instant. Yet it is needful for you to learn just what this shift entails, so you will become willing to make it permanent. Given this willingness, it will not leave you, for it is permanent. Once you have accepted it as the only perception you want, it is translated into knowledge by the part that God Himself plays in the atonement, for it is the only step in it He understands. Therefore, in this there will be no delay when you are ready for it. God is ready now, but you are not. So this paragraph is explaining that it is a process of moving out of ego mind into spirit mind. And that as we have a holy instant where we glimpse the spiritual self that we truly are, it's a step forward. And the more of these holy instances that we have, the closer we get. But it is a process. And like it says at the end, there will be no delay when you are ready for it. God is ready now, but you are not, because we're still students. Paragraph 2. Our task is but to continue as fast as possible the necessary process of looking straight at all the interference and seeing it exactly as it is. For it is impossible to recognize as holy without gratification what you think you want. The body is the symbol of the ego, and the ego is the symbol of the separation. And both are nothing more than attempts to limit communication and thereby to make it impossible. For communication must be unlimited in order to have meaning, and deprived of meaning, it will not satisfy you completely. Yet it remains the only means by which you can establish real relationships, which have no limits, having been established by God. So again, our task is but to continue and look straight at the interference. In other words, look straight upon the ego and see it for what it is. See it for the illusion that it is. The body is the symbol of the ego. And as long as we continue to think that our bodies are real, we'll be trapped in ego thinking. And the ego, the body, is the symbol of separation. There's us and them. There's me and there's God. We're separate, which is what the ego teaches. The spirit, when it says communication, both are nothing more than attempts to limit communication. Communication is the key word for spirit. So ego and body are attempts to limit the spirit and make it impossible for us to see spirit. But communication is unlimited. Spirit is unlimited. And only that will satisfy us completely. The ego will never satisfy us completely. And the relationships that we strive for are the holy relationships, which is that there's only one of us. We are one with God and one with one another. That's the only real relationship that was established by God. Are there any questions, comments? Yes, David.
I've had many conversations with people, and they say they feel empty. They don't have a community. It seems to be the human condition not to feel the oneness we all can share, and there's a lot of suffering in the world because we don't share that. We don't share ourselves. We're not intimate with the quote unquote other, because there's too much fear of being intimate with the quote unquote other.
Yes, there is a lot of fear in the ego. And yes, a lot of people feel lonely and alone and separate. And that's because they are steeped in their ego mind. If they understood that they are not their bodies, that they're actually spiritual beings, and that they're connected with everyone and with God all of the time, 100%, then it would alleviate those feelings. And that's the process that we're going through now, is the process of understanding that and realizing that for ourselves and living our lives according to those ideas, spiritual ideas, instead of ego ideas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paragraph 3. In the holy instant, where the great rays replace the body in awareness, the recognition of relationships without limits is given you. But in order to see this, it is necessary to give up every use the ego has for the body, and to accept the fact that the ego has no purpose you would share with it. For the ego would limit everyone to a body for its own purposes. And while you think it has a purpose, you will choose to utilize the means by which it tries to turn its purpose into accomplishments. This will never be accomplished. Yet you have surely recognized that the ego, whose goals are altogether unattainable, will strive for them with all its might, and will do so with the strength that you have given it. So again, we just have to be persistent in giving up the ego thoughts in our mind, because the promises of the ego are all false. We need to give up our identification of the body, thinking that we're our bodies. The ego goals are altogether unattainable. 4, it is impossible to divide your strength between heaven and hell, God and the ego, and release your power to creation, which is the only purpose for which it was given you. Love would always give increase. Limits are demanded by the ego and represent its demands to make little and ineffectual. Limit your sight of a brother to his body, which you will do as long as you would not release him from it, and you have denied his gift to you. His body cannot give it, and seek it not through yours. Yet your minds are already continuous, and their union need only be accepted, and the loneliness in heaven is gone. It's impossible to divide your strength between heaven and hell, between God and the ego. You have to decide. We have free will, and we have the decider in our mind. At every moment of every piece of time, we can decide to go with ego or go with spirit. It's up to us. So do not limit your sight to our brothers, to their bodies. Look beyond their bodies and see the soul within them, the spirit within them. And by doing that, you'll see the spirit within yourself. Any comments, questions?
I do have a comment. This is such an issue for me because when one becomes ill and takes on that illness as real in the body, it, for me, I judge it differently than a lot of my peers. And lately, when I do make these judgments about illness in the body, I'm beginning to see, I can see exactly what you mentioned in this paragraph. I can see the inner works of that person that is just a mass with threads and strands and cords of ill will and unhappiness. When lately, if I feel my body is not up to par, I started beginning to talk to God about what that is about, because it's not real. I mean, yes, it may cause some discomfort, but in the realm of it's something, a source of unlove. It's a source of something other than love and kind words and goodness. So that's just kind of where I've been at lately.
Thank you, Helen. Well, that's good
Um,
that you've been working on this. Um, whenever the body is giving you problems, I'd suggest that you just in your mind say, Holy Spirit, I give this body up to you. Just release your attachment to the body and give it over to Holy Spirit. And when somebody is sick or something, I look upon them and I see them surrounded in light, and I pray the affirmation for them. You are not your body. You are immortal spirit, whole and innocent. All is forgiven and released. And that's my prayer to sick people, to dying people, to, people who are feeling ill. I can't force them to understand that about themselves, but I can communicate that thought to them, mind to mind. And I need to communicate that thought to myself when my body is not feeling up to par. So, and it's difficult for people to get beyond their bodies. When you tell people that you're not your body, they look at you like you're crazy.
It's true, John. And the key word is I listen, and I have a lot of friends, and some might say, I take my medicine, or my, they use the word my in reference to their illness.
Right.
And so to me, that means they have taken this illness on as real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the language, how we think is reflected in the language that we use, which is why it's so important to change the language of our thinking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's in, I think that was in 2 paragraphs before, is there was a little thing about communication.
Right.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. We're on paragraph 5. If you would but let the Holy Spirit tell you of the love of God for you and the need your creations have to be with you forever, you would experience the attraction of the eternal. No one can hear him speak of this and long remain willing to linger here. For it is your will to be in heaven, where you are complete and quiet, in such sure and loving relationships that any limit is impossible. Would you not exchange your little relationships for this? For the body is little and limited, and only those whom you would see without the limits of ego would impose on them can offer you the gift of freedom. The gift of freedom we give to ourselves when we give that gift to our brothers. When we can look at the other and say, You are not your body. You are a mortal spirit, whole and innocent. Then we are giving that gift of freedom to them and to ourselves at the same time, because we are them, they are us, we are one. And this is like a really key idea to comprehend and understand. There is no separation. The only separation that exists is the ego's dream. It's not real. Ed.
Using heaven here, for it is your will to be in heaven. We don't die. We're continuing to be to be reborn, I guess. Explain heaven, I guess.
That's just another name for spirit. It is your will to be in spirit, to be your true spiritual self. It's God's will for us to realize that we are spiritual beings, and it is our will, our true self, not our ego self, but our true self's will is to realize that we are spiritual beings, that we will to be in heaven. We will to be spiritual beings. And that is where we are complete and quiet and sure of loving relationships without limit. Remember, Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. People forget that quote from the Bible, and it's like one of my favorites. The kingdom of heaven is within you, Jesus said. It's not outside. It's not something separate. It's not up in the clouds. You're a spiritual being within yourself. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Number 6. You have no conception of the limits you have placed on your perception, and no idea of all the loveliness that you could see. But this you must remember. The attraction of guilt opposes the attraction of God. His attraction for you remains unlimited, but because your power, being his, is as great as his, you can turn away from love. What you invest in guilt, you withdraw from God, and your sight grows weak and dim and limited, for you have attempted to separate the Father from the Son and limit their communication. Seek not atonement in further separation, and limit not your vision of God's Son to what interferes with his release, and what the Holy Spirit must undo to set him free. For his belief in limits has imprisoned him. I'll go over that again. You have no conception of the limits you have placed on your perception with ego thinking, and no idea of the loveliness that you could see with spiritual thinking or seeing. The attraction of guilt, the attraction of the ego, is opposed to the attraction of God. God's attraction remains unlimited, but we are powerful beings because we are made in the image and likeness of God. And if we take our power and turn it away from love, if we take our power and use it to see ego, then our investment in ego and guilt will withdraw us from God. We do it to ourselves. God doesn't do it to us. We do it to ourselves with our own free will. And your sight grows weak and dim and limited if you're seeing ego, for you're attempting to separate yourself from God, to separate the Father from the Son, and limit the communication of spirit. So seek not atonement in the ego in further separation, and limit not your vision of yourself to what interferes with your release and what the Holy Spirit must do to set you free. For your belief in limits has imprisoned you. If you believe you are your body, if you believe in those limits of ego, then you are imprisoning yourself. If you think of yourself and identify as a spiritual being, as the Son of God, then you're breaking out of the prison. And our last paragraph, 7. When the body ceases to attract you, and when you place no value on it as a means of getting anything, then there will be no interference in communication, and your thoughts will be as free as God's. As you let the Holy Spirit teach you how to use the body only for purposes of communication and renounce its use for separation and attack, which the ego sees in it, you will learn to have no need of a body at all. In the holy instant, there are no bodies, and you experience only the attraction of God. Accepting it as undivided, you join him wholly in an instant, for you would place no limits on your union with him. The reality of this relationship becomes the only truth that you could ever want. All truth is here. Comments, questions?
I think that's quite a goal to try to achieve.
And it is, and that's the goal. That's the goal that we're given. The whole book is edging us towards this goal.
When in the part when it did it say you were not your body?
Yeah, several times.
And so I had the vision of myself just floating around the universe, going over to my car, just floating around. Um,
Right.
that would be, I guess, ungrounded, but I love the concept of it, the vision.
Paragraph 3 says, in the holy instant, there are no bodies.
Or it says, you will learn you have no need of a body at all.
Yes. In sentence 2, you will learn you have no need of a body at all.
So we just leave the body and say, wave goodbye to it.
In your mind, you stop identifying with it. While we're in the ego dream, we still have to take care of our body. We have to feed it and clothe it and wash it and try to keep it as healthy as possible. It is our responsibility to do that. But you can do that without identifying with the body. It's like a car. You get into the car to drive it around. Well, if the tires go flat, you fix the tires. If you give it a regular oil change, you feed it gas when it's out of gas. You wash it, you clean it. It is your vehicle, and you have the responsibility to take care of the vehicle that you're driving around while you're driving around in the ego world.
Great analogy.
And that's your body. So I know I have a body, but I am not my body. The I who I am is a spiritual being inhabiting this body while I'm running around in the ego world. It's an experience.
Thank you. Good. Very good.
You're welcome. Yes, David.
When I let go of my body, I'm with God.
Yes. But even when you don't let go of your body, you're still with God. That's the thing. We're always with God. We just don't realize it.
Yeah.
There's never a time that we're not with God and that God is not with us. That's
when we pass, we're with God, but we're also with God when we're in our ego bodies.
Yes. The Holy Spirit is always in our mind, our consciousness. When our consciousness leaves the body and the body dies, the consciousness goes on because we're eternal spiritual beings. The ego bodies come and go. Again, just like cars, eventually the car wears out, it breaks down, you have to get a new car. It gets in a crash, blah, 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 whatever happens, they don't last forever because they're of the ego construct. But the spirit is eternal. The spirit never dies.
When we don't take responsibility for our lives, where does that put us in ego? It must be.
I'm going to say yes if I understand your question. Yeah, we do have to be responsible in our ego lives for what we do, for what we say, for what we think, for our bodies, for our homes, for the people in our lives. We do need to exercise responsibility in a loving way if we're pursuing a spiritual life. Is that answer to your question?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
This is something you can talk about for a long time.
I have to go, John. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
I had,
Bye-bye.
All righty then. Any other comments?
I just wanted to say this one, this is in paragraph 4. Love would always give way to increase. That is, I love that. I mean, when you talk of love and kindness towards one another, you're increasing. Limits
Yes.
limits are demanded by the ego and represents its demands to make little influential. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Yes. Actually, what love by definition is the sharing of yourself, is the expanding. And love, and as you give, it increases. That's how God created us, by extending his love. By extending love, it increases, and that's how we create. That's the process of creation. So love would always give increase.
So I went to the registry today, and the lady I could see had smiled that I was waiting in line to see this one woman, and I noticed that a couple of times she smiled, and when she smiled, she had a beautiful smile. But then a couple of times she didn't smile. So when I went up to her, I said to her, "Wow, you have such a beautiful smile." And she's like, "Wow, wow, wow," she was a little grouchy, And I said it again. I said, "Your smile is very beautiful." And the transaction, now I was looking for some reward for that kind of comment, but I didn't do it for the reward. I really meant it. She had a beautiful smile, and I wanted her to see that about herself, whatever. And but after that, the transaction just went seamless. It was a really good transaction.
Good.
Now, I don't know her that well that she could respond and say how she felt one way or the other. But for me, I felt the increase.
Good.
Never hurts to be kind.
I'm so say it again.
Never hurts to be kind. And I was in a restaurant recently, and there was this young lady sitting across the restaurant from me, but she kept on smiling. I just came out of my mouth. I said, "You got a beautiful smile." And she couldn't stop smiling the whole time she was there.
That's cool. I love seeing people like that.
It doesn't hurt to love, to love somebody. You don't have to know them. You don't have to expect anything from them.
Yes. Thank you, David. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you.
All righty then, friends, let's have a moment of silence and then we'll stop our recording.